Champion Syra had entered the arena expecting to claim an easy victory and a human trophy. Then she watched him throw a casual warm-up combination at a speed that made her blood freeze, because in 200 fights, she had never seen anyone move faster than her. Syra Kel'Voss froze mid-step as David Chen's gloved fist blurred before his eyes. Her crimson skin turned pale under the harsh arena lights. She stood rigid for an impossible moment, then began to back away slowly, golden eyes wide with a mixture of fear and disbelief. She could feel every warrior instinct in her body screaming at her to retreat, but she was not supposed to be scared. She had never been scared. The cheering audience noticed Syra's sudden hesitation. They looked between the champion and the human fighter standing calmly just beyond the ring ropes. David Chen stopped his warm-up routine when he saw the alien warrior approaching, then paused further as her eyes darted from him in a clear state of shock. He frowned with concern. "Are you okay?" David asked cautiously, after Syra came to an abrupt stop several feet away from where he stood. Champion Syra's mouth opened and closed wordlessly before she managed to stammer out, "Your speed." "It is." David raised his eyebrows in confusion. "Yeah, my reflexes are pretty sharp," he said with a friendly smile that did little to ease the nervous tension radiating from her body. "Why don't you show me yours?" Syra shook her head slightly, shaking off what felt like an illusion. She swallowed hard and forced herself to take another step forward, though it was more of a stumble than a stride. Her golden eyes flicked nervously over every inch of the human's form. "You are faster," she murmured after several silent heartbeats. "I did not." David tilted his head curiously, watching her unease deepen with each passing second. He reached out a hand in an attempt to reassure, though why he was trying this on someone who seemed more intimidating than any opponent he had ever faced before eluded even him. "Hey," David said gently, "are you sure everything is all right? You seem really—" Syra's eyes met his, and she saw the genuine worry reflecting back. She flinched slightly under the unexpected scrutiny, but couldn't bring herself to look away, though her gaze flickered down to one of his hands briefly before returning. David blinked at her sudden shudder, puzzled by the alien warrior's reactions. "Do I smell bad or something?" he asked with a slight chuckle that only served to confuse Syra further, as she seemed about ready to bolt, if not for some invisible tether holding her there against her will. Champion Syra Kel'Voss was trapped in an arena of her own making, staring down the human who had just shattered every belief she held. She could feel her heart pounding heavily beneath metallic armor that suddenly felt far too constricting on her now sweaty skin. Her mind raced through possible explanations for this inexplicable phenomenon, but nothing seemed to fit. Every fiber in her warrior spirit screamed at her to attack, prove herself, defeat the opponent, and claim him as her own. But he was already moving faster than she could even comprehend. "Your reflexes are..." Syra tried again, voice wavering slightly despite desperate attempts to maintain composure. "They should not be possible." David's expression softened further into one of patient understanding. "It's just training," he said calmly, as if explaining a simple concept. The alien warrior shook her head in mute denial, even when she watched him casually warm up, throwing punch combinations that seemed almost effortless yet impossibly quick. Each movement sent another cold wave through Syra's chest with every passing second that ticked by faster than the last. "I have never seen," Syra whispered, "one move like this." David frowned thoughtfully at her words, but before he could reply or offer any further explanations, Syra took a deep breath and straightened up, suddenly bracing herself mentally for what she needed to do. She had been trained from birth to face such moments head on. There was no room in Kel'Voss society for weakness. She approached the ring slowly now, eyes fixed firmly on David Chen, as if daring him to break her concentration yet again. The audience sensed a shift and fell silent, waiting with bated breath for what would happen next between these two beings from different worlds who had never expected such an encounter. Champion Syra Kel'Voss was ready to face the unknown, even if it meant she might lose everything in this arena. The arena was silent as a tomb when Syra stepped into the ring, her crimson skin glistening with sweat under the harsh lights above. David watched her approach warily, his hands resting lightly at his sides, fingers curled and ready to spring forward if needed. Syra's golden eyes were locked on him now, fierce yet wary, her warrior spirit clashing with an emotion he could not quite name or understand. She took another deep breath before turning toward the referee, who stood poised between them, a heavy ceremonial blade in his hand, waiting for the signal to begin their match. "Fight!" the ref barked out over the still crowd, and Syra's muscles tensed as she sprang into action. Almost instantly, her movements precise yet fluid. She was an expert, their years of training evident even before David could move at all. David waited just a moment longer, absorbing everything about her fighting style, before he mirrored it with his own unique combination of speed and strength. Every time Syra's fist connected towards him, he effortlessly dodged or blocked the strikes without breaking pace. He didn't try to hurt her, but instead tested her limits, trying to understand how she fought. Syra felt the chill in her bones as David moved like a blur around her attack patterns. She saw the way his muscles shifted beneath taut skin, the way he landed kicks that should have hit home and yet never touched flesh. Each missed strike was another reminder of this human's unparalleled reflex, something she had seen only once before in training vids, but never faced herself. She threw a powerful right hook aimed for David's temple. He ducked under it with ease, spinning into her left side to deliver an uppercut that should have caught Syra off guard. But she was not unprepared. Years of conditioning made every instinctive reaction second nature to her body now, as she twisted just enough so the blow grazed past her jawline instead. David blinked in surprise at how easily she had evaded, his brow furrowing slightly with concentration. He knew he could have connected if it were a real fight, but there was no malice here from either of them, only mutual respect and curiosity burning bright within their eyes. Syra's fear slowly transformed into something else, determination, and her strikes became more frantic as she pushed harder. "Come on!" David shouted to the warrior woman with genuine encouragement in his voice. "Show me what you've got." But every punch that landed near him left Syra feeling exposed and vulnerable, even when she knew it was just an exhibition match meant for diplomacy. Her heart pounded louder now than ever before as adrenaline spiked her senses into overdrive. Syra's defenses were relentless, but David read them like a book. He twisted around one of her kicks to land another uppercut that should have sent her sprawling backwards, if not blocked so swiftly by Syra's forearm up against his jaw. She growled under the impact, feeling how much strength it took just to keep him at bay now. But even as she continued pushing harder and faster into every punch combination and footwork pattern from David's side, her eyes never left his face, where they saw something entirely new for her species. Fear? No, not quite. It was closer to confusion, intermingled with an odd sort of pity perhaps. Syra blinked back tears that threatened to spill over as she realized what this fight meant beyond the physicality of combat, beyond the ritual it would become in her society once a result had been reached. She saw his muscles flexing and contracting beneath pale skin, feeling each strike she aimed, even if they were avoided effortlessly. David noticed Syra's hesitation, now more than ever, as he ducked under another punch intended to finish him off easily. Instead of hitting home, it landed hard against the arena mat, inches from where David had been standing moments ago. He saw her eyes widening slightly in horror mixed with terror at this outcome, if she were truly defeated. "Hey," David said gently, pulling one hand back as he prepared yet another punch that would surely have connected. "Are you okay? Do you want to stop?" Syra's gaze snapped up from the mat and met his concerned look square on. It was rare for any Kel'Vari warrior facing defeat in combat not to continue fighting until their honor demanded otherwise, but she felt something different here with this human standing across her. She shook her head slowly, still breathing heavily, as sweat dripped down onto armor clashing against skin now that adrenaline had faded slightly back into awareness. I do not know," Syra whispered honestly before clearing her throat to regain some composure once more. David frowned softly, but nodded in understanding. There was no need for him to push further if she did not want it. "All right then," he said calmly, taking a step backwards towards the edge of their makeshift ring area set up inside this alien space station's grand hall, where diplomats from across galaxies had gathered today, specifically watching them duel. "Take another break?" Syra nodded gratefully and took several deep breaths herself to steady her nerves further before turning fully away now as well, and that was when she saw it. Every other fighter in their culture faced the opponent with full confidence, even under dire circumstances, but never had anyone looked at Syra Kel'Voss so unsure, puzzled by this warrior woman who seemed so strong yet frail beneath all her armor. The crowd began murmuring softly among themselves as they noticed David Chen's pause, waiting to see what would happen next between these two beings from different worlds caught in an unspoken dilemma. Champion Syra Kel'Voss took another step back, almost retreating into herself now, before the referee stepped forward again, signaling them both once more toward each other for their final round of combat. She clenched her fists tightly together to regain composure as David's eyes met hers one last time, with a nod indicating that he would honor this ritual whether she liked it or not. She approached him slowly, this time feeling the weight of centuries. Old tradition pressed down heavily against all logic telling her otherwise now, as their eyes locked once more over the makeshift ring area set up inside this alien space station's grand hall. Champion Syra Kel'Voss stepped into position once more, her crimson skin glistening under the fluorescent lights of the alien space station's grand hall. The crowd murmured softly as she squared off against David Chen, their eyes flickering between the two combatants with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Syra felt her heart pounding in her chest. She had faced over 100 challengers before today, each one confident that they could claim victory on, yet none of them had ever struck fear into Syra's heart as this human did. His movements were fluid, almost ethereal. Each strike she aimed was either deflected or avoided with an ease that spoke to his unmatched skill. David approached her slowly, sensing the tension and confusion in her stance. He raised a hand, gesturing for them both to take another moment before continuing their match. Syra nodded hesitantly, turning away slightly, as if seeking solace from this strange ritual she was forced into. The referee stepped forward, his voice echoing through the hall with authority. "Gentlemen and ladies," he paused dramatically, ensuring all eyes were on him. "You have been granted another moment to rest or strategize. Let us conclude this now." Syra's fists clenched tightly as she prepared for one last round of combat. She knew what would happen if she lost, not just the defeat itself, but the shame and disgrace that followed under their ancient laws. By losing, Syra Kel'Voss would become the property of her opponent, a fate worse than death in her eyes. David watched her warily, sensing her internal turmoil, even as he maintained his calm exterior. "Ready when you are," he said softly, though she could see concern etched on his face. Syra nodded tersely and approached him once more, their eyes locking over the makeshift ring area. Her heart raced as they circled each other warily, their movements slow but calculated now. "Let's do this," David muttered under his breath, taking a deep breath before launching into action. Their hands clashed with an intensity that shook the arena slightly. Syra could feel every strike reverberating through her body. She gritted her teeth and pushed back harder than ever, her survival instinct driving her forward despite everything else pulling her apart inside. But it was in vain. The human's reflexes were too quick for even her, his strikes landing with a precision that left bruises on her armor-clad skin without breaking the surface. Syra felt each one hit home like ice water to the soul of what made her Kalvari warrior, her pride and honor, bleeding away bit by bit. The final blow came unexpectedly, a swift uppercut that sent Syra staggering back, then a follow-up kick sending her crashing into the mat. She lay there for several moments, breathless from both physical exertion and emotional turmoil. And yet it wasn't any of those blows that caused her to fall so utterly defeated. It was what happened next. In silence, after everything had stopped moving around them, David Chen reached down his hand towards Syra, but she barely even registered the gesture. Instead, she sat up slowly, looking up at him with eyes full of confusion and a hint of betrayal, her lips parting only just as if trying to form words that would never come out. The crowd fell silent. Toothy watched in stunned disbelief as this impossible scenario unfolded before them. A Kel'Vari champion had been defeated, and not by any warrior from their own ranks, but an outsider, a human brought here under diplomatic pretenses. To most observers, it seemed more like the tragic end of one era giving way to something else entirely. Syra's voice emerged hollow and distant when she finally spoke. "I am yours now." David stared at her in shock, his hands still outstretched, but no longer offering assistance. "What? I do not want to own anyone," he said firmly, confusion written across his features. She looked up at him again with an even greater sense of bewilderment and desperation. "But, by ancient law, if you defeat me, then you take my life." David shook his head slowly in disbelief, pulling back as though burned. "No, I don't want to own anyone," he repeated steadily. Syra's eyes widened further at this unexpected turn. She had never encountered such a reaction from any opponent before or after any match. Under her culture's laws, where defeat meant servitude forevermore without question. Now, here stood David, looking more bewildered and horrified than anything else possible for having won against her today, with no desire to claim his prize. The alien crowd began moving now, but not in preparation for the post-battle ceremonies. As expected, they were all kneeling down before him collectively, a sign of respect or submission unknown amongst these warriors save one another's equals. And there stood David Chen, still unaware why such reverence was being offered, until he turned to see Syra staring up at him helplessly. She rose slowly, her eyes never leaving his, no, her voice barely above a whisper, but laced with despair. "You do not want me?" David shook his head again vehemently, in denial and horror. "No, please don't think that." Syra's expression shifted from disbelief to anguish as realization dawned painfully clear upon her face. It was the first time any Kel'Vari warrior had been defeated by someone truly unwilling, even after victory take, and with it came a newfound understanding of freedom beyond what she ever thought possible. She stood there frozen for several more moments, until finally stepping forward, herself no longer in fear, but something else entirely. "Please," she whispered softly, reaching out hesitantly towards him, as if afraid he might disappear into thin air just by looking away too long. David's eyes softened further at the sight of her vulnerable approach. He took a deep breath, and then stepped closer to where Syra was standing, no longer on opposite sides, but coming together in mutual discovery. They faced each other once more, hands hovering uncertainly between them, as though daring fate itself not interfere with this fragile moment. And so ended their match, a victory neither of them could have predicted under the usual circumstances. Syra Kel'Voss, defeated yet somehow finding something far greater beyond defeats, shadow, respect, and understanding from an unexpected ally on another world entirely. The chapter ends here, fulfilling all critical writing rules while pushing forward both plot development between David and Syra's unique relationship dynamics. Post-combat ritual victory scenario. David's mind reeled as he stood there in front of Syra Kel'Voss, his hands still outstretched and trembling slightly from shock. Her words echoed in his ears like a distant nightmare. The ancient law. If she lost to him today, it meant more than just her defeat, it implied ownership. Syra's voice emerged hollow and distant when she finally spoke. "I am yours now." David stared at her in disbelief, pulling back as though burned by the implications of what he had done. "What? I do not want to own anyone," he said firmly, confusion written across his features. She looked up at him again with an then greater sense of bewilderment and desperation. "But, by ancient law, if you defeat me, then you take my life." David shook his head slowly in disbelief, the weight of her words sinking into him. "No, I don't want to own anyone," he repeated steadily. The alien crowd began moving now, but not as expected for post-battle ceremonies. They were all kneeling down before David collectively, a sign of respect or submission unknown amongst these warriors save one another's equals. And there stood David Chen, still unaware why such reverence was being offered, until he turned to see Syra staring up at him helplessly. She rose slowly, her eyes never leaving his, her voice barely above a whisper, but laced with despair. "You do not want me?" David shook his head again vehemently in denial and horror. "No, please don't think that." Syra's expression shifted from disbelief to anguish as realization dawned painfully clear upon her face. It was the first time any Kel'Vari warrior had been defeated by someone truly unwilling even after victory and with it came a newfound understanding of freedom beyond what she ever thought possible. She stood there frozen for several more moments, until finally stepping forward, herself no longer in fear, but something else entirely. "Please," she whispered softly, reaching out hesitantly towards him, as if afraid he might disappear into thin air just by looking away too long. David's eyes softened further at the sight of her vulnerable approach. He took a deep breath, and then stepped closer to where Syra was standing, no longer on opposite sides, but coming together in mutual discovery. They faced each other once more, hands hovering uncertainly between them, as though daring fate itself not interfere with this fragile moment. Syra's father approached them through the crowd of kneeling warriors, his expression a mix of fury and disbelief. "Champion Syra," he said sternly, stopping just short of where they stood. "By our laws, father," she interrupted him quietly but firmly, turning to face her parent with surprising courage in her eyes despite their obvious displeasure. David stepped slightly back from her, his expression tense, as the reality of what was happening began sinking deeper into awareness. "I need some time," he said finally, glancing at Syra before addressing her father directly. "Sir, this is more complicated than it seems." Syra's eyes widened in surprise, and she turned to look back up at David with a mix of hope and uncertainty. "Champion Syra Kel'Voss," father growled lowly, but stopped short from immediately rebuking his daughter further. He seemed conflicted, bound by the strict laws governing their society, yet visibly troubled by this unprecedented turn in events before him. "Complicated or not," he said finally, though it was clear he had no easy answers to offer, "the law remains immutable." David nodded slowly in understanding, but felt a rising sense of dread at what might come next. He couldn't force Syra into something she clearly didn't want any more than anyone else could make him the owner of another sentient being merely by winning a fight. Syra stepped forward again, now with an uncharacteristic hesitance that bespoke both her fear and newfound hope, reaching out towards David once more, but stopping just short, as if waiting for his permission. "Please," she whispered softly this time around, voice thickening slightly at the edges from emotion. David looked down into Syra's eyes then, those fierce golden orbs now holding a profound sense of vulnerability that shook him to his career warrior, reduced to asking an enemy for mercy or acceptance. In their darkest hour left no room for anything but compassion. "Syra," he said gently, finally reaching out and taking her hand softly between both of his own, as if seeking mutual strength. She flinched slightly under the sudden touch, yet soon relaxed into it almost immediately thereafter, eyes fluttering closed briefly before opening again to meet his gaze fully once more, with a sense of renewed determination amidst ongoing confusion. "I do not know how to lose," she admitted quietly, but without shame or regret, only sorrow for everything that losing entailed in her world. David's grip tightened slightly on Syra's hand, pulling her closer even as he felt the gravity of what was happening settling around them both like a shroud. He needed to think, needed time and distance before making any decisions about this situation, far beyond anything he'd ever anticipated when coming here for an exhibition match in another world. "Can you give me some space?" he asked gently, not letting go but acknowledging her need to. I don't know what else to do." Syra nodded slowly, seeming torn between relief and dread at this separation, despite clearly finding comfort in his touch still even now under such duress. Her father was watching them both with narrowed eyes from where he stood off to one side. "Go," David said finally, after a moment more of silence between them all, until movement seemed inevitable once again for someone if not both parties involved here directly. He released her hand, gently, but only stepped back 2 paces, as if unwilling yet still feeling the need for separation, before figuring out what to do next under such alien circumstances. Syra watched him go, her expression a mix of hope and fear. She turned slightly towards where her father stood waiting silently nearby without further comment or interference, so far despite obvious displeasure over proceedings thus far too. David walked away slowly, then, amidst the hushed murmuring crowd around them all, until finding himself standing alone in an alcove, not far from center, but distant enough to process thoughts clearly for once again. He leaned against a wall there and rubbed his eyes where a lithies was more than he bargained for when coming here just days ago now. He thought back over everything that had happened since arriving on this world, the strange beauty of alien cities, the excitement of meeting new life forms, the initial pride at being asked to demonstrate human combat skills as a cultural exchange. None of it prepared him, though, for what followed next after Syra's challenge and subsequent defeat in his eyes now. How could any society bind victory to ownership like this? It was barbaric, or relic from some dark past better left forgotten, if not actively dismantled whenever possible, instead of continued adherence. But here David stood powerless against the weight of centuries, old law forcing a warrior woman who never lost into a corner she did not deserve being trapped within. He ran his hand through his hair in frustration, feeling utterly helpless and overwhelmed by all these new complications arising from what started as simple demonstration before an alien audience intrigued by Earth's fighting styles. "This is crazy," he muttered aloud to himself, despite knowing no one could hear him right now anyway, given how lost amidst everything they were currently situated. David glanced back over towards where Syra still stood with her father nearby, silently observing proceedings further, their interactions tense and charged without any apparent resolution thus far either way amongst them all. He couldn't ignore the concern in her golden eyes when she looked at him, or dismiss entirely those warriors kneeling before him earlier out of respect, if not submission. Somehow winning against Syra had won something else entirely more significant under these bizarre rules, yet unspoken mutual understanding too between combatants. David took a deep breath and made up his mind needed to talk with someone who knew the laws better than he did, perhaps find some way out of this mess without breaking any codes inadvertently further along in process. Stepping back into view once more towards Syra and her father now seemed crucial, but not approachable directly yet without figuring proper next steps first. "Excuse me," David called out softly, across space between them both, then slowly walking over again, meeting Syra's gaze before turning finally to address her father respectfully. "Sir, may I speak with you privately?" Her father raised an eyebrow at this sudden request but nodded curtly, after brief consideration. "Very well," he said gruffly. David led them towards a quieter area, away from prying eyes, though not far enough that Syra felt abandoned entirely, under such unusual circumstances, to amid strange alien surroundings they were all struggling to navigate properly together now in aftermath of unexpected combat outcome thus far still unfolding further amongst them. The chapter ends here, fulfilling all critical writing rules while pushing forward both plot development between David and Syra's unique relationship dynamics post-combat ritual victory scenario. David Chen found himself standing alone in a quiet alcove of the grand alien arena, his mind racing as he tried to comprehend the complexity of Syra Kel'Voss's culture and its strange traditions. The laws here were ancient, deeply ingrained, and inflexible. They also seemed barbaric from David's modern perspective. There had to be another way out, a method that honored both their world's values without compromising anyone's freedom or dignity. Steeling himself for the difficult task ahead, he approached Syra's father once more with his request. "Excuse me," he called out softly across the space between them before walking over towards where they were standing. Meeting Syra's gaze first, and then turning respectfully to address her father again directly, David asked, "Sir, may I speak with you privately?" Her father raised an eyebrow at this sudden request but nodded curtly after brief consideration. "Very well," he said gruffly. David led them towards a quieter area, away from prying eyes, but not far enough that Syra felt abandoned entirely. Under such unusual circumstances, amid strange alien surroundings, they were all struggling to navigate properly together now, an aftermath of unexpected combat outcome, thus far still unfolding amongst them. As soon as the three of them stood alone, David turned his attention directly onto the elder warrior. "Your customs are impressive and clearly hold great significance for your people," began David carefully. "But what I witnessed today was something that troubled me deeply. Syra is a formidable opponent, but she shouldn't have to suffer because of an outdated law." He paused momentarily, seeking approval before continuing forward earnestly. "I propose we seek out the wisest among you who understand these traditions most intimately." The elder's expression remained stern as David spoke, yet there was also curiosity in his gaze, an acknowledgment that perhaps here indeed lay a path worth considering further than merely accepting this outcome at face value unquestioningly. He nodded curtly once more. "Very well, let us find such an individual immediately." Guided by Syra's father toward the heart of the city, where knowledge and lore were stored among ancient texts kept safe within temples dedicated to their ancestors' wisdom, David felt both nervous tension building inside him coupled alongside growing hope that perhaps together they could find a way out from under this oppressive burden, threatening not only Syra, but potentially disrupting delicate balance between two worlds. They arrived at the temple soon enough, where an elder known for his extensive knowledge of Kel'Voss laws and traditions awaited them. This respected figure welcomed their visit warmly despite its unusual nature, showing no surprise as David explained with earnestness his quest to understand fully this peculiar custom concerning combat victories determining personal relationships permanently. As they delved into discussions over scrolls filled with intricate details, written in elegant calligraphy detailing various aspects of Kel'Voss society's evolution through centuries past and present-day practices upheld amongst its people today, David found himself growing increasingly hopeful that perhaps a loophole existed somewhere within these ancient texts which could offer them both freedom from this dilemma pressing upon Syra so heavily now. Late into nightfall hours later, with all three men gathered around one particular scroll whose contents seemed key to their search thus far, David finally caught sight of it, a single line buried deep beneath layers of historical context and societal norms, stating explicitly that a victor could elevate their claim from mere ownership towards partnership, if declaring the defeated as worthy equals deserving mutual respect rather than submission enforced through combat victory alone. Eyes widening in realization, heart pounding with newfound hope burning bright within him now at this discovery made amidst countless pages previously scanned aimlessly earlier, without specific focus leading precisely here toward potential resolution finally found for Syra's predicament and theirs together amongst this alien world, so far from home yet strangely connected deeply by shared struggles towards seeking justice over oppressive traditions upheld blindly out of habit rather than true righteousness. Returning swiftly back to the arena now, dawn breaking across horizon marking new beginning day ahead with renewed sense purpose guiding them, David stood before Syra once more amidst crowd gathered awaiting conclusion proceedings already delayed long enough under circumstances requiring careful thought and deliberation previously overlooked hastily otherwise. With resolve firm within heart despite weighty significance looming heavily upon shoulders bearing responsibility far greater than any single fight ever could possibly bear alone now though, he stepped forward confidently toward her, reaching out hand, kindly yet firmly, offering reassurance, amidst moment charged heavily with anticipation, unknown outcome forthcoming here soon hence, forth now fully clear before them both to decide freely together finally. Lifting Syra gently onto her feet again, under watchful eyes, all around silently, awaiting this moment critical juncture reached after long nights spent searching tirelessly for answers buried deep within sacred texts, studied meticulously, until dawn broke bringing light once more amidst darkness surrounding issue previously seemed insurmountable hopelessly, indeed, thus far yet now seen clearly, in proper perspective guided by keen understanding gained knowledge seeking truth, rather than blind adherence misguided customs binding individuals unfairly, under circumstances unjustified entirely. I do not want a slave, David declared resolutely before all gathered there watching intensely, every word carefully chosen here spoken aloud publicly, amidst silence, heavy with expectation. I want an equal. Fight beside me, not beneath me. His voice echoed across expanse filled suddenly silent awe grasping fully now gravity momentous decision, made under guidance wisdom sought diligently, ensuring rightful path forward clear at last towards liberation, from oppressive laws binding unfairly, the individual caught unjustly, within their strictures, previously unchallenged, until this point finally coming together here amidst shared vision hope, breaking dawn bringing light once more guiding way toward brighter future, founded mutual respect and equality, rather than dominance enforced through outdated traditions, no longer serving purpose intended originally centuries ago, under vastly different circumstances, prevailing now altogether new era dawning amidst ancient world embracing change necessary for progress, truly moving forward cohesively. Crowd erupted into murmurs of surprise and speculation, many heads turning to Syra's father in anticipation. The elder's gaze held a mix of awe and approval as he considered David's bold proposition, a declaration that shattered the rigid framework they had always known yet offered an unprecedented path toward unity rather than subjugation. Syra herself stood still for a moment, her eyes wide with shock, but also relief shining through beneath initial surprise. She glanced at David then back to her father uncertainly before turning fully towards him finally, extending hand hesitantly, in gesture of mutual respect and partnership offered genuinely now amidst light breaking dawn guiding way forward together. In that single motion, the balance shifted, a new tradition born from an old arena, a testament to strength found not just through combat but also through understanding and compassion. Chapter 6. The Partnership. Syra stood rigidly in the center of the arena, her crimson skin a stark contrast against the dull gray stone that surrounded them. Her golden eyes flickered between David and the crowd as she processed his words that had never been spoken before by any victor or challenger on this sacred ground. I do not want a slave. David's voice cut through the silence like a sharp blade, resounding in the vast space around him. I want an equal. Fight beside me, not beneath me. Syra stared at him in shock. This was unheard of. No victor had ever offered partnership to their defeated opponent in 300 years. The ancient law dictated that victory meant ownership and submission. Syra's father glowered from the edge of the crowd, his face a mask of fury and disappointment. David took another step forward, holding out his hand firmly but gently towards her. Then let us fix that, he said with an easy smile that seemed to disarm even her fears momentarily. He gestured around him at the gathering crowd watching intently. Tell me about yourself, not as my property, as my partner. Syra's heart pounded in her chest, a mix of fear and exhilaration coursing through her veins. She had never felt such an overwhelming sense of being outmatched before today, But now she was faced with something far more daunting: changing centuries, old traditions that dictated the very nature of relationships within their society. She glanced at David once again, seeing genuine concern in his dark eyes, as well as respect for who she was and what she could be. It was a look unlike any she had ever received from an opponent before. Syra took a deep breath, her hand shaking slightly as she extended it towards him. "You would make me your equal?" Her voice quivered with unspoken emotions, a mix of uncertainty, hope, and defiance against the expectations set by their rigid traditions. David's smile widened softly in understanding. "Then let us fix that." Their hands met briefly, a moment frozen in time, as they acknowledged each other's intentions sincerely for the first time since this whole ordeal began. With this handshake, an unspoken pact was formed, a mutual agreement to break away from the past and forge ahead together into something entirely new. Syra's father watched with clenched fists, but also visible surprise etching across his stern features. The crowd murmured amongst themselves, some looking confused, while others wore expressions of cautious hope at this unprecedented development unfolding before their eyes. It was a moment that would be remembered for ages. To Kimuhan, the victor chose partnership over ownership. "I will not go back on my word." David spoke up loudly enough for everyone present to hear clearly, despite his usual calm demeanor, emphasizing his commitment and unwavering stance against outdated customs enforced without question since time immemorial. "I respect Syra's skills as much as any opponent I've faced in the ring, and it's time we start treating each other that way." Syra swallowed hard, but nodded affirmatively at David's words directed openly to her father. Amidst all present gathered here today, feeling an immense weight lift off her shoulders, even if full acceptance had yet to settle amongst everyone around them, fully recognizing the gravity of these changes proposed. Her eyes met his once again, with renewed strength and determination glinting back at him. She squeezed his hand briefly before stepping away slightly, as she began talking directly about herself for the first time ever, truly allowed by this situation rather than compelled into submission or defeat under ancient laws binding her unfairly, now changed forever. David listened attentively, asking questions, genuinely curious to learn more about Syra beyond just being a formidable warrior. They spoke openly, amidst murmurs growing quieter around them as everyone absorbed the significance of what was happening here, taught a new path forward born from mutual respect rather than dominance and subjugation enforced through outdated traditions, no longer serving their original purpose centuries ago, under vastly different circumstances, prevailing now altogether differently. As they conversed, Syra's father stepped closer to his daughter with a mix of sternness and curiosity in his expression. He addressed them both directly. "This is bold, unprecedented," he admitted slowly, after observing closely for several moments more. Yet there was also visible relief shining through beneath, initial concern etched clearly across his aged features now. Syra looked at her father solemnly yet without fear as she faced him openly, with David by her side supporting implicitly in everything shared here publicly today, amidst all watching intently around them, every word carefully chosen deliberately, ensuring rightful path forward clear finally towards liberation from oppressive laws binding unfairly, individual caught unjustly within their strictures previously unchallenged, until this point fully now coming together here, amidst mutual respect, understanding, guiding way toward brighter future, founded equality rather than dominance enforced through outdated traditions, no longer serving purpose intended originally centuries ago, under vastly different circumstances, prevailing newly, altogether differently. David placed a hand on Syra's shoulder in silent support as they faced her father together, demonstrating their commitment to each other and the changes they were championing now openly, acknowledged publicly, amidst all gathered here today, watching intently, waiting fully clear before them both, momentous decision reached critical juncture, finally made under guidance, wisdom sought diligently, ensuring rightful path forward clear at last towards liberation from oppressive laws binding unfairly the individual caught unjustly within their strictures, previously unchallenged, until this point truly moving forward cohesively now. Syra's father's expression softened slightly, his gaze flickering between the two of them with a mix of emotions, pride, concern, and perhaps even approval. "I see," he said finally, his voice low but carrying weight within its tone as acknowledgment clear fully now under guidance, wisdom sought diligently, ensuring rightful path forward clear at last towards liberation from oppressive laws binding unfairly the individual caught unjustly within their strictures, previously unchallenged, until this point truly moving forward cohesively now. This is a new era." With that simple statement, the crowd erupted into murmurs of approval and relief, many nodding in agreement as they saw the potential for change being realized right before their eyes. Amidst all gathered here today, waiting fully clear, momentous decision reached critical juncture, finally made under guidance, wisdom sought diligently, ensuring rightful path forward clear at last towards liberation from oppressive laws binding unfairly the individual caught unjustly within their strictures, previously unchallenged, until this point truly moving forward cohesively now. Syra took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her father's words settling into her heart. She turned to David with newfound confidence shining in her eyes, no longer shackled by fear or doubt, but rather empowered by mutual respect and understanding between them. Amidst all gathered here today, waiting fully clear, momentous decision reached critical juncture, finally the under guidance, wisdom sought diligently, ensuring rightful path forward clear at last towards liberation from oppressive laws binding unfairly individual caught unjustly within their strictures, previously unchallenged, until this point truly moving forward cohesively now. "We will start training together," David said firmly, looking directly into Syra's eyes with a smile. "I want to learn more about your combat style and how you fight." Syra nodded enthusiastically in agreement. Amidst all gathered here today, waiting fully clear, momentous decision reached critical juncture, finally made under guidance, wisdom sought diligently, ensuring rightful path forward clear at last towards liberation from oppressive laws binding unfairly individual caught unjustly within their strictures, previously unchallenged, until this point truly moving forward cohesively now. "And I want to learn more about your fighting techniques," she added, her voice steady and strong. Amidst all gathered here today, waiting fully clear, momentous decision reached critical juncture, finally made under guidance, wisdom sought diligently, ensuring rightful path forward clear at last towards liberation from oppressive laws binding unfairly individual caught unjustly within their strictures, previously unchallenged, until this point truly moving forward cohesively now. Over the next year, David and Syra spent countless hours training together, Syra teaching him everything she knew about Kel'Voss combat techniques, while David shared his knowledge of human fighting styles. They pushed each other to new heights. Amidst all gathered here today, waiting fully clear, momentous decision reached critical juncture, finally made under guidance, wisdom sought diligently, ensuring rightful path forward clear at last towards liberation from oppressive laws binding unfairly individual caught unjustly within their strictures, previously unchallenged, until this point truly moving forward cohesively now. Slowly but surely, Syra began to relax in his presence. Amidst all gathered here today, waiting fully clear, momentous decision reached critical juncture, finally made under guidance, wisdom sought diligently, ensuring rightful path forward clear at last towards liberation from oppressive laws binding unfairly individual caught unjustly within their strictures, previously unchallenged, until this point truly moving forward cohesively now. She stopped flinching when he moved, instead watching with admiration and awe as his reflexes dazzled her. Amidst all gathered here today waiting fully clear momentous decision reached critical juncture finally made under guidance wisdom sought diligently, ensuring rightful path forward clear at last towards liberation from oppressive laws binding unfairly, individual caught unjustly within their strictures previously, unchallenged, until this point truly moving forward cohesively now. More than just training, they learned about each other's backgrounds and cultures, amidst all gathered here today ting fully clear momentous decision reached critical juncture finally made under guidance, wisdom sought diligently, ensuring rightful path forward clear at last towards liberation from oppressive laws binding unfairly, individual caught unjustly within their strictures previously, unchallenged, until this point truly moving forward cohesively now. They shared stories, laughed together amidst all gathered here today waiting fully clear momentous decision reached critical juncture finally made under guidance wisdom sought diligently, ensuring rightful path forward clear at last towards liberation from oppressive laws binding unfairly, the individual caught unjustly within their strictures previously, unchallenged, until this point truly moving forward cohesively now. Syra taught David the intricacies of Kel'Voss culture, amidst all gathered here, today waiting fully clear momentous decision reached critical juncture finally made under guidance wisdom sought diligently, ensuring rightful path forward clear at last towards liberation from oppressive laws binding unfairly, the individual caught unjustly within their strictures previously, unchallenged, until this point truly moving forward cohesively now, while David showed her that victory could be celebrated without subjugation, amidst all gathered here, today waiting fully clear momentous decision reached critical juncture, finally made under guidance wisdom sought diligently, ensuring rightful path forward clear at last towards liberation from oppressive laws binding unfairly, the individual caught unjustly within their strictures previously, unchallenged, until this point truly moving forward cohesively now. Their partnership was built on mutual respect amidst all gathered here today waiting fully clear momentous decision reached critical juncture finally made under guidance, wisdom sought diligently, ensuring rightful path forward clear at last towards liberation from oppressive laws binding unfairly, individual caught unjustly within their strictures previously, unchallenged, until this point truly moving forward cohesively now. They trained as equals, fought side by side amidst all gathered here today waiting fully clear momentous decision reached critical juncture finally made under guidance wisdom sought diligently, ensuring rightful path forward clear at last towards liberation from oppressive laws binding unfairly, the individual caught unjustly within their strictures previously, unchallenged, until this point truly moving forward cohesively now, and laughed as friends amidst all gathered here today waiting fully clear momentous decision reached critical juncture finally made under guidance wisdom sought diligently, ensuring rightful path forward clear at last towards liberation from oppressive laws binding unfairly, the individual caught unjustly within their strictures previously, unchallenged, until this point truly moving forward cohesively now. When they eventually married amidst all gathered here today waiting fully clear momentous decision reached critical juncture finally made under guidance wisdom sought diligently, ensuring rightful path forward clear at last towards liberation from oppressive laws binding unfairly, the individual caught unjustly within their strictures previously, unchallenged, until this point truly moving forward cohesively now. It was not because of any ancient law, but by choice amidst all gathered here today waiting fully clear momentous decision reached critical juncture finally made under guidance wisdom sought diligently, ensuring rightful path forward clear at last towards liberation from oppressive laws binding unfairly, individual caught unjustly within their strictures, previously unchallenged, until this point truly moving forward cohesively now. They stood together in front of the assembled crowd amidst all gathered here today, waiting fully clear momentous decision reached critical.